Off the wild coast of South Africa, the Agulhas Current has triggered the greatest migration on Earth. Billions of sardines trapped in a relentless oceanic gauntlet. Dolphins, sharks, and diving birds tear through the biomass, but they are merely the opening act. Because in the freezing, dark depths below, a titan is waking, and by nightfall, it will claim the ultimate prize. It is 5 o'clock in the morning, and the world is wrapped tightly in cool, muted blue hues and thick, drifting morning mist. This is the mighty Agulhas Current, one of the most powerful, turbulent, and nutrient-rich oceanic highways on the planet. Deep beneath these rolling, heavy swells, the mechanics of survival operate with cold, unforgiving, and mathematical precision. In these early, lightless hours, the ocean belongs entirely to the solitary travelers and ancient wanderers. A solitary albatross rests gently on the undulating surface tension, its massive wings folded perfectly as it waits patiently for the morning coastal winds to gather enough strength for flight. Far below, enveloped in a gentle, drifting shower of falling marine snow, a massive leatherback turtle beats its heavy, leathery flippers with an ancient, unhurried rhythm, navigating the vast blue void exactly as its ancestors have done for millions of years. The water here is cold, dense, and thick with biological anticipation. A solitary manta ray glides effortlessly through the dark mid-water column, a silent, breathtaking phantom displacing the ocean with the slow, hypnotic flaps of its massive cephalic fins. The ocean ecosystem is awakening, driven entirely by strict biological imperative, thermodynamic shifts, and the sheer, raw physics of the wild environment, which is shaped by the rugged, wild coast topography that drives deep oceanic upwelling. This cold nutrient flow ignites a massive phytoplankton bloom, supporting an unimaginable volume of marine biomass. Suspended in this immense, nutrient-dense expanse are millions of the South African pilchard species, drifting quietly in loosely scattered, shimmering formations. They are small, silver, and entirely vulnerable, driven inexorably northward by the cold oceanic currents in what is known worldwide as the legendary Sardine Run. For now, in the dim light, they move peacefully, a vast, shimmering river of life suspended in the deep blue. But this oceanic tranquility is a fragile illusion. As the clock nears 7, the soft, diffused light of the morning sun finally begins to illuminate the murky depths, and the architects of the greatest oceanic predator aggregation on Earth quietly arrive on the scene. Pods of common dolphins, numbering in the hundreds, cut through the dense water with perfectly engineered, flawless hydrodynamics. The intricate pulses of common dolphin echolocation vibrate forcefully through the liquid medium, an incredibly advanced biological sonar rapidly mapping the exact location, density, and trajectory of the drifting prey. Operating with ruthless, militaristic, tactical precision, the dolphin pods begin to circle the scattered fish, violently exhaling streams of air from their blowholes to form complex, rising bubble nets. This physical, ascending wall of air terrifies and traps the sardines, forcing them relentlessly upward toward the surface and compressing their numbers into a massive, tightly packed, vibrating defensive sphere universally known as a bait-ball defense mechanism. By 8 in the morning, the atmospheric energy of the environment has shifted into a state of extreme, high vitality. The ocean rapidly transforms into a chaotic theater of raw, explosive, and unbridled power. The frantic, terrified vibrations of millions of tiny fins acting in synchronized panic send powerful, low-frequency acoustic shock waves radiating out into the open sea, acting as an unavoidable dinner bell for the deep ocean's ultimate pelagic predators. Rising ominously from the dark, cold abyss is the bronze whaler shark, a formidable, heavy-bodied engine of pure muscle, cartilage and predatory instinct. They do not pause. Swarming in massive, terrifying numbers, they strike the vibrating bait ball with brutal, concussive force, thrashing their heavy bodies violently to tear straight through the dense wall of silver scales. The legendary feeding frenzy has officially ignited. The defensive sphere is a true marvel of evolutionary collective behavior, a swirling, mesmerizing vortex designed strictly to confuse optical trackers, but against the sheer mechanical velocity and brute force of the ocean's greatest apex hunters, it offers only a brief, desperate delay of the inevitable reality of the marine food web and its stunning marine biodiversity. The assault almost immediately becomes a three-dimensional battlefield. Slicing through the violent chaos with effortless, serpentine grace is the blue shark, opportunistically snatching isolated stragglers that break from the main school. From the freezing, lightless depths directly below, the ocean's fastest predatory machine, the short-fin mako shark, launches a devastating vertical strike like a living torpedo, shattering the tight formation with blinding, physics-defying speed that leaves a trail of cavitation bubbles in its wake. Yet, the overwhelming danger does not only manifest from the deep water. Driven relentlessly to the impassable, hard ceiling of the ocean's surface, the trapped sardines now face a terrifying, overwhelming aerial bombardment. The morning sky darkens dramatically as thousands of Cape Gannets fold their wings tightly back, transforming their bodies into aerodynamic darts before plunging violently into the water at staggering highway speeds. The concussive, explosive impact of their bodies hitting the ocean's surface sounds exactly like underwater artillery fire. They leave long, straight, silvery trails of dragged air as they literally fly downward through the water column, gripping their terrified prey with lethal, surgical accuracy. Adding to this brutal, multi-layered attack, a dark, unintentional masterpiece of a symbiotic hunting strategy, highly agile African penguins dart rapidly through the lower perimeter of the chaos, twisting, rolling, and turning with unmatched aquatic maneuverability to completely dissect the fractured, bleeding edges of the fish school. As the sun climbs steadily to its highest zenith, flat, natural midday light washes evenly over the turbulent Agulhas Current. By midday, the sheer, completely unsustainable expenditure of kinetic energy demands a necessary pause in the violence. The feeding frenzy reaches a state of absolute thermodynamic exhaustion. The ocean temporarily quiets its roar, leaving behind a hauntingly beautiful, slow-drifting underwater snowstorm of millions of discarded silver fish scales slowly falling into the dark abyss. Functioning within a perfectly balanced apex marine ecosystem, the apex predators must now rest and recover their strength. The exhausted common dolphins enter a sleep-like physiological state known as logging, hanging completely vertically near the warm surface to conserve critical oxygen and muscle energy. Weary, heavily scarred bronze whaler sharks retreat downward to the cooler, highly oxygenated deep currents, gliding sluggishly and passively to process their incredibly heavy meals. Even the incredibly agile Cape fur seals, which had spent the entire morning nimbly and playfully stealing scraps directly from the jaws of giant sharks, now float peacefully on their backs at the surface, their eyes completely closed in deep, restorative fatigue. During this quiet midday lull, the true, peaceful behemoths of the sea make their quiet, majestic transit through the graveyard. A colossal humpback whale passes slowly along the outer periphery of the battlefield, completely uninterested in the tiny floating fish scraps, its long, haunting, low-frequency song vibrating powerfully through the dense water column.
Nearby, a brilliantly colored sailfish and a massive school of yellowfin tuna cruise lethargically through the debris, carefully saving their high metabolism, fast-twitch energy reserves for the cooler, active hunting hours of the late afternoon.
However, the peace of the afternoon is strictly temporary in this environment. As the sun begins its steady descent and the harsh daylight slowly shifts into warm, muted, dusty golden tones, the cooling surface water signals a terrifying, immediate resumption of pelagic hostilities. The sudden arrival of the ocean's ultimate tactical hunters, a highly coordinated, matriarch-led pod of orcas, instantly and fundamentally shifts the entire balance of power in the region. The common dolphins, instantly recognizing the overwhelming biological dominance and lethal intelligence of these black and white titans, immediately abandon their hunting efforts and scatter frantically into the deep blue void. The orcas glide effortlessly through the water with terrifying, silent grace, utilizing their massive physical size and profound echolocation capabilities to methodically survey the shattered, bleeding remnants of the sardine shoals. Emboldened by the rapidly dropping temperatures, solitary, highly aggressive predators like the dusky shark and the bold, fearless oceanic white-tip shark finally emerge from the deep shadows to forcefully claim the remaining spoils of the day. The white-tip patrols the area with an arrogant, undisputed confidence, its prominent white-mottled pectoral fins slicing perfectly through the water as it effortlessly and violently crushes the thoroughly exhausted, panicking prey. Under the renewed, relentless, multi-front assault, the structural integrity of the main bait ball finally and irreversibly collapses. The unified defensive mass fractures permanently into incredibly small, desperate, and heavily traumatized clusters of exhausted fish. It is a stark, brutal, and unfiltered demonstration of the biological food web operating at its most ruthless capacity. Competition among the remaining hungry predators turns increasingly and violently physical. Massive cartilaginous sharks collide with one another with heavy, brutal thuds, aggressively contesting every single scrap of remaining caloric energy. The ocean is transformed into a chaotic, terrifying blur of thrashing heavy tails, loudly snapping jaws, and frantic, hopeless escapes. Yet, as the sun dips ever lower toward the horizon and the light continues to visibly fade from the water column, the frantic, explosive energy of the late afternoon slowly begins to wane. The specialized scavengers finally arrive to thoroughly clean the biological battlefield. The strong ocean currents sweep away the remaining organic debris, and the primary architects of the hunt, the dolphins and the diving seabirds, quietly begin their long, arduous journeys away toward the darkening horizon. Twilight finally descends upon the wild coast, completely replacing the warm afternoon hues with a dusty, muted orange sky that quickly and inevitably gives way to pure, impenetrable, and absolute darkness. By 7 in the evening, the ocean ecosystem has transformed entirely into a chilling, haunting void of deep shadows. The primary visual hunters of the day are rendered completely blind, leaving the dangerous waters entirely to nocturnal creatures governed strictly by highly evolved, non-visual sensory biology. A few dozen terrified, completely exhausted sardines still remain, paralyzed in the pitch-black water column, their tiny gills barely moving as they desperately try to remain entirely acoustically silent. From the deepest, most crushing, lightless depths of the oceanic trench, mysterious and ancient denizens begin their slow, nightly upward migration into the hunting grounds. The terrifying, massive silhouette of a giant squid pulses silently and smoothly in the abyss, a true, undisputed monster of the deep claiming the dark hours. The surviving fish hold perfectly, rigidly still, narrowly evading the highly sensitive electrical ampullae sensors of a late-passing, sluggish bronze whaler shark. They wait in the suffocating, heavy silence, surrounded on all sides by an endless, terrifying expanse of absolute blackness. But the ocean's biological memory is incredibly long, and its greatest, most massive consumers possess infinite, calculating patience. Deep in the lightless void, far below the scattered survivors, a true leviathan has been waiting in absolute silence. A colossal Bryde whale, having hovered motionlessly on the extreme deep periphery of the day-long war, finally shifts its immense, heavy bulk in the freezing water. With a devastating, unimaginably powerful thrust of its massive tail fluke, the Titan rockets vertically upward from the black abyss on a direct collision course, executing a flawless display of Bryde's whale lunge feeding. The physical displacement of water is immediately catastrophic, generating a roaring, heavy, low-frequency vibration that completely shatters the fragile silence of the twilight. The tiny cluster of remaining sardines is instantly caught in the overwhelming, inescapable, upward hydrodynamic draft. As the giant violently breaches the twilight zone, its monstrous, grooved throat pleats expand outward like a gigantic biological parachute, engulfing thousands of gallons of seawater and the absolute final remnants of the sardine shoal in a single, earth-shattering, unstoppable lunge. The massive, impenetrable baleen plates crash shut with finality, permanently sealing the biological vault. As the fully gorged whale sinks gracefully and silently back down into the crushing depths, the ocean's surface calms perfectly. The greatest feeding frenzy on the planet officially concludes, swallowed once again by the cold, eternal, and absolute silence of the deep blue. As twilight claims the wild coast, the frenzy fades into the deep. But the nutrient trail doesn't end here. It drifts relentlessly south, drawn by icy currents toward the frozen shores of Antarctica, where a completely different, ruthless intelligence rules the ice.